You've written, well, you've quoted Russell Warner saying nobody is a prisoner of their IQ, and you've also written, I think this is going to be controversial in some circles, that there is this effective formula for success. Can you talk about those two things?
Yeah, so there's the success sequence, which it's received a lot of attention and discussion. I think typically the political right likes to highlight it because the success sequence, there are 3 steps. If you graduate from high school, get a full-time job, and get married before you have children, there's a 97% chance you will not live in poverty. Just 3 simple steps. The right highlights this because these are relatively simple steps to follow, and they tend to emphasize personal responsibility more so. And the political left, a lot of the cultural commentators are aware of this. If you Google success sequence, you'll see Vox and some of these outlets will actually try to do a debunking. Actually, the success sequence is wrong because it's really hard to graduate from high school if you're poor or something like that.
And you say outright in your article, it's very, very easy. I spilled Powerade on an essay and got a C-. They really don't want to fail you.
It's extremely easy. I grew up in foster homes in Los Angeles, and if you look at the high school graduation rate for the students categorized in the lowest socioeconomic strata, their high school graduation rates are equivalent to the average graduation rate in Los Angeles as a whole. So if you're poor, it has almost no effect at all on your likelihood of graduating from high school. Did I say college before? But high school. But if you look at the rates of graduation for foster care, for example, it's around 60%. So for the average rate is around 86%. Foster kids around 60%. But so poverty itself doesn't seem to be a factor for likelihood of high school graduation rates. And then getting a full-time job, and these are relatively simple steps to take. And yet I think that there's an overemphasis on IQ. And how if you lack the right sort of level of cognitive endowment, then you're a hopeless case, you're a lost cause. That nowadays in this sort of complex environment, or if you want to live a good life, you need to be smart. And I just don't think that's true. I mean, I went through that cycle. I went through that cycle of when I first learned about intelligence, and I think a lot of people go through. It's like, wow, this explains everything.
It's not just this explains everything. It's nobody's talking about this. So you tell the story about, was it at Yale, someone recommending, what courses should we have? And you're like, isn't this the most robust concept in psychology? Is that this person just dead eyes being like, maybe stereotypes?
Yeah. And well, in like intro psych, students will have maybe a half a lecture where the professor will mention intelligence, but then they'll also discuss the history of biases, and they'll discuss Gardner's multiple intelligences theory, and then and then students are come away from this thinking like, oh, intelligence is this thing, but maybe it's not that that reliable.
So when people like us find it, we're like,
exactly.
We should be talking about this more, but you can overdo it, I guess.
Yeah, well, you can read the papers, and you can read and you see that actually it has very strong predictive power. And so and I'm like, oh wow, intelligence, it's so interesting. No one's talking. It's this taboo topic, and then after you start to think about it for a while, and you start to see these other studies and these other findings, and you think well, the correlation between SES and IQ is 0.3, maybe 0.4, and I mean in psychology that's really high, but in the real world, it's there's you don't have to be that smart if you want to have a high income. I mean it helps, but it's not necessarily a requirement.
Yeah, well, I guess if you are. I forget who said this. It might have even been you. If you're at the floor to get into Princeton to do whatever the easiest degree is, then you're still going to be making so many contacts that if you then want to go and work in a law firm or whatever, it's like, oh, Jeremy's dad is a partner there. I can get you in. So there's obviously a lot more than just IQ. There's a threshold effect there, even if there's not one in respect to actual achievement or creativity or whatever.
And I think just a lot of these findings underscore the importance of other factors beyond IQ, right? Like IQ we have to distinguish between IQ is probably the strongest predictor of all of these important variables. But if you look at it alone, it doesn't explain it explains very little. There's something else out there. It's just something else that
It explains
that
a lot
helps
if
you.
you're going to be a mathematician or a physicist,
right.
right?
Yeah,
If you're going to do something that's basically analytic, which is what IQ is.
Yeah, well, yeah, if you want to predict someone's level of education or income or something like that, it is the strongest predictor, but it doesn't explain nearly everything.
Yeah.
So there are other factors involved, and I think that if we overemphasize it, we can create situations in which people, they'll give up on themselves or the most affluent and educated members of society who dictate policy and sort of shape the cultural discussion around achievement and so forth. They'll think, oh well, if you don't meet this cutoff, then we'll just kind of have to give up on you.
So a reply to that, and I don't know how depressing you find this, is, well, if you then look at something like educational attainment, we find it's more heritable than IQ. And people are like, wait, what? How's it more heritable? It's like, well, because there's more that goes into your A-levels, your SAT score, than just IQ, and those things are also heritable.
Yeah.
Do you have a reply to that?
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense, because if your parents both went to college, then it's just much easier for you to follow along that same track. I mean, there was a study somewhere in, I think, one of the Scandinavian countries. Tyler Cowen and Daniel Gross cite this study in their recent book on talent, about how one of these countries, parental occupation was a stronger predictor for whether a child would become like a doctor or a lawyer than IQ. That's the environment and the options around you can help to sort of determine what your own choices are, especially when you're young and you're thinking about what to do. Whereas IQ is this sort of ephemeral, it's this heritable thing, but if you don't have opportunities to express it, or if you don't have opportunities to act on it, then oftentimes, you'll be a high IQ person who's maybe not doing so well in life. So, yeah, I agree. Like, IQ is necessary, but not sufficient to be like a great physicist or something like that. But I mean, one of the points that I try to make with that article, "Nobody's a Prisoner of Their IQ," is that IQ is relatively fixed. It's largely heritable. But there are other factors that are responsive to environment and incentives. So if we suddenly made it high status, if we started to confer status and social rewards and prestige onto being smart, you're not going to raise the number of smart people in society. Maybe you will at the margins to some degree. People will be more willing to sort of express their intelligence, but you're not going to actually lift G. But you will be able to, if you were to confer status, say, on hard work or being a good person, being an ethical, honest, thrifty, industrious, and so forth, cooperative, people will actually sort of counteract their natural inclinations. They'll sort of overcome maybe their low conscientiousness or something in order to obtain those rewards. Status is a powerful reward, and people will respond to it. And if we overemphasize IQ and overlook the importance of these other traits, which also can predict success and living a decent life, then we may be sort of inadvertently contributing to further sort of social deterioration and decline.